So now to move on to kind of the meat of what we usually talk about. We're going to talk about some comics. So Travis, do you want to go ahead and Start out?
So, did anybody have anything else besides the House of X, Powers of X? I mean, I don't see anything else in here
No,
for anyone
not
else.
this time. I think we all. I think that's about all we read was House of X, Powers of X.
Because it's been a busy.
Yeah, I think we've all been busy.
Yeah. So
Fantastic Four continues to be good.
we got some Fantastic Four from Derek, but other than that, it's pretty much pox.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I can hit on the stuff that I want to talk about, and then if someone else wants to chime in, that's fine. So this first one that I want to talk about is called Die, and I've seen it in the store a few times when I've gone, and I didn't really understand what it was supposed to be about, and then I read a description of it, and just the description of it got me hooked. This is actually a story. It's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons meets Jumanji. So the first chapter, and I'll kind of go through like the first story just to kind of get you the mindset of what it's about. So these kids all get together as teenagers. It's like a birthday party. There's 6 of them. They decide they're going to play this role-playing game, and they have these new dice that one of them brings, and he's giving them out, and everybody has a different, sided dice. There's the 4-sided dice, 6, 8, 10, 12, and then he keeps the 20 as the game master. And there's some things that happen, and they all disappear, and they're gone. And it jumps ahead 2 years later, 5 of them reappear, and one of them's missing an arm. And they're, they're a little bit older. I mean, they've aged a little bit. And people are like, well, what's been going on? Where have you been for 2 years? And they're not saying anything. They're like, we're not going to talk about it. Jump ahead another 20 years. They're adults. They've lived their lives. They're all kind of still fighting some of this trauma that they've experienced as teenagers. And then all of a sudden, but by the way, the one that didn't show up was the one that was the game master with the 20-sided die. All of a sudden, that dice shows up with blood on it on one of their doorsteps. And now they're in the situation of, oh my gosh, she's still alive. Like, what are we going to do? And so I'm not going to go into too much, but they end up going back. And now they've gone back to these characters, and you haven't really seen anything of this fantasy world until they go back. And now you're kind of seeing these powers that they've had, these abilities, and kind of the aftermath of what they did play out in this fantasy world that, didn't exist until they went there and they created it, essentially. So it's a really interesting story. If you've ever done any role-playing games, it's kind of like the ultimate role-playing game, because it's what you would love to do is actually go in there and you realize that it might not be the greatest thing, but it's just an interesting dynamic. And there's a lot of things that play out. Like the main character is a guy, but he actually he does his role-playing as a girl, and so in the story he's a girl. Everybody else has their same gender, and there's been some in the last story I read where they're like, why did you pick a girl? And like, he didn't want to explain. Like, he's like, it's not a simple answer. It's not something I can just give you 5 seconds and you'll understand. It's more complicated. And they just kind of play it, leave it at that. But I really enjoyed it. And it's Kieran Gillen. I hope I'm saying that right. Same person that did Wicked and Divine. He's also done one of the Darth Vader series that I read, and some of the later Star Wars issues that I've read. So I really like his writing. The artwork is actually really beautiful. So I would recommend that one. The second one I have on here, real fast, is King Thor. It's the aftermath of the Jason Aaron's last Thor series and the War of the Realms. This is, in the future. He is now king of Asgard. He's got granddaughters. Loki is still around, and he is the ultimate bad guy in this story. He's actually in control of the All Black, which, if you're familiar with Jason Aaron's Thor at all, you're familiar with that. And it's only been one season, one issue. It's going to be a mini 4-issue series, and that's going to tie up Jason Aaron's Thor. I think that's going to be his final conclusion with that. And then the last thing I wanted to throw in there was Spawn 300 came out, I think the week after or the week of our last show. I really enjoyed it. It is a milestone issue, so you did get that 4 or 5 different stories kind of pieced together that you get in these big milestone issues. The artwork is great. They redid some of the costumes for some of the main characters, including Spawn. I don't think it's going to last. I've seen a little bit from issue 301, and it looks like they're kind of going to go back to the traditional costume artwork for Spawn, but it was interesting to see this kind of transformation. And they brought back the counter. If you've ever read Spawn, the early Spawn issues, they had a counter that would count down, and there was always this question of what's going to happen when you get to 0, and nobody really knew. And so in this one, you get that understanding of what happens when the counter reaches 0. So it's an interesting comic, and again, I would say it's a great place to start. I would say if you want to get into Spawn, go back to 296, do the history of Spawn before jumping into this one.
Cool.
But yep.
Did you have a question?
Yeah. Actually, so in addition to the counter, did they bring anything else back from the beginning of Spawn in general, or was it just the counter? Did he make an appearance?
He doesn't make an appearance. They make some comments about Malbolgia. I think somebody is So I read it immediately after it came out, and I haven't gotten a chance to go back and reread it. But I do recall there being some discussion about Malbolgia and somebody making the comment of, if that's who you thought was really running hell, you have no idea what's been going on. And I think that's one of the bad guys. I know the Violator is in this, and they've changed his image up. So at first I didn't recognize him, but they've given him a little bit of twist. He's not the goofy-looking clown anymore. He's a more like crime boss-looking clown in this one.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've read Die now, because that is one of those that I kept seeing on the shelf and kind of looked it up and been wanting to read it. So I may have to go back and do you know if there's a first volume out yet, or are you reading individual issues?
Yeah, so it was actually the first volume that I picked up and read the back of, because I think the first time I saw it, it was already on issue 3 or 4, and the first volume covers the first 5, and I didn't understand what the cover, all the covers you see this triangle pattern, and it didn't occur to me that that's a 20-sided die folded out. That's the whole. Yeah, because when I saw it, I thought it was something about death, afterlife, and stuff, and it's totally not.
Yeah. Sorry, we got one of the cats looking
we had some technical difficulty here.
Some feline difficulty.
It was too much cuteness.
Yeah, cool. I'll have to pick up volume 1.
Right here? Or is it over here?
So, no,
well,
we're good.
You were close.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks, Travis. Okay. Do you want to talk about Fantastic Four a little bit, Derek?
Sure. I'm really still impressed with the storytelling in Fantastic Four at this point in time. It's really strong still. If you have not started reading it or have decided not to pick it up, that's a shame, because I went many years. I've never really read it. Many. And when I picked this up, I didn't think a whole lot about it, but then I really enjoyed it. I think it really is a good story, and it's very well written. It's probably the best I feel like Fantastic Four has been written in a very long time. Furthermore, I really like there's this. I don't know if it's a spin-off so much as just a short series, but The Invisible Woman has her own comic. I don't know how long that's going to last, but it is actually pretty strong as well. She plays not a sniper, but she is a spy in this, and apparently she's had a long history as a spy that you've never ever heard of. And I think they did really well with it. So I really suggest that if you have not picked it up, you might want to consider it. It's really good. Yeah.
I've been reading about it, and one of the cool things is that her daughter Valeria has been kind of coaching her on some new ways to use her powers that are coming out in that miniseries. So she's able to disguise herself.
The Invisible Woman one?
The Invisible Woman.
Yeah, she does. It's really good.
So she's able to disguise herself by changing the way her force field or her invisible field reflects light, so she changes her hair to darker,
Yep.
slightly darkens her skin.
Yep.
Interesting.
So I've always loved the Invisible Woman. You know, she's
Yeah.
And
incredibly
the creative
powerful,
ways she can,
and just to see something new here all these many years later is exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's really good.
Yeah. One thing I did see while we're talking about comics, so Future Foundation, they started that, and I think it's maybe 2 or 3 issues in, but it's already been canceled. Like, it is not doing well, apparently. And some of the criticism I saw was that it's not tied into the Fantastic Four. Like, it seems like,
It wasn't.
and I never read Future Foundation or anything like that, or any of Hickman's run from then, but they were saying that the Future Foundation works best when it's kind of in tandem with Fantastic Four.
Yeah,
And
I picked up the
so
first.
I'm wondering if that's some of the trouble that they're having.
Yeah, I picked up the first issue of it,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing that I have about it is, you're right, it's not connected.
Yeah.
But the main thing I didn't care for was, I just have zero interest in any of the characters.
Yeah, that was it for me.
I mean,
Yeah.
Julie Power from the Power Pack, I don't care.
I like Julie.
Yeah,
I like the
I
Power
just,
Pack, but I didn't really need to see her somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah,
And ultimately, with so many, books are so expensive now. There's so many
characters
books
you've never
out
heard
now.
of too. Yeah.
You really just have to hit a home run to
Mhm.
me to spend that money.
Yeah, there were
Yeah.
some really
Who
little
else was in
alien
there?
creatures in there that I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Google it.
So anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there. I saw that sometime this week. So, is there any other comic news we want to kind of talk about?
Yeah, before we get to the X, I picked up the newest issue of Young Justice, and this arc has just been really fun. It's Bendis, which I know you don't like him normally, but it's
He's like, no.
no, not at all.
This is still Boom
I mean,
Comics,
that's
right?
fine. People can like Bendis. I just do not. I do not like Bendis.
Yeah, it's whatever that young.
Boom. Is it Boom
It's
Comics?
not Boom. It's something else.
No, it's
Young Animal.
No, it's not that either.
Okay.
I
But
thought,
anyway,
I thought Young Animal was dead.
Young Animal is like the
Maybe
weird
it is.
stuff. Like Doom Patrol is Young Animal.
Oh, that's right.
I love Young Animal.
Um,
That's my speed.
But it's DC's young titles, so it's Wonder Twins, Naomi, Young Justice is those.
Gotcha.
So they've had a really good first arc. They're starting their second arc now, and they're currently on the Crime Syndicate Earth. So they're jumping through multiverses, and this is where we get introduced to Red Robin, Tim Drake's new comic identity. And I'm going to go ahead and spoil it.
Do it. Do it.
Because his new name is going to be. His new name is going to be Drake. And in and of itself, it sounds cool. It's kind of like, ooh, Drake. That's kind of bad,
Like a dragon.
Yeah. But it's supposedly because there's supposed to be this dangerous bird named Drake, and that's what he got from his Earth 3 counterpart, and blah, 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 blah. So I thought, ooh, what bird is this I've not heard of? So I Googled it, and it was just a male dove. So I hated the name Red Robin, hated it. And I thought, well, this is what we got now. So it was a little irritating. So so that is the only thing that I can say that's bad. Otherwise, it's really a cool read.
Wonder Comics.
Wonder Comics, yeah, that's it. And it ties well into a lot of what's happening in the rest of the DC, even though they've been, in the gym world for a while. Now they're on Earth 3. I think they've done some more hopping around. But for example, they're on Earth 3, but all the Earth 3 heroes who came over to Justice League, years ago in the New 52 and essentially got killed, disbanded, put in prison, blah, 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 blah. So it's showing their world without the crime syndicate and what's happened to it. So that was actually a neat little piece of writing in there. So I'm enjoying that. And soon Naomi is going to join, which, she's one of the new characters that came up last year. So looking forward to that.
Cool. All right. Anything else?
Anything, Rashad?
Rashad, you got anything? No.
Yeah. No.
So, all right. So the big one, House of X, Powers of X. We are more than halfway through at this point. So who wants to start?
Can I just say? I already told Mark this. I was totally right about who that 8th mutant was on Asteroid K. I called it last time. And I was totally right.
Yes,
You were.
He was right. He was very proud. He even pulled it out and showed it to me again because I was like, "What were you talking about?" I slept since then. So first I want to give out a shout out to Nora Hickman,
Hey, Nora.
one of our friends who is just now getting into comic books. She's been on the DC Universe app, reading voraciously, and then she's really big into Justice League Dark and those characters. And then she says, "Oh, I want to try some Marvel now," and so she opted for House of X, Powers of 10. And she's loving it too. And like us, it's, you read an issue and you have to sometimes go back and read it again. I'm absolutely loving how complex the narrative is and how intricate it is, and the surprises that he's giving us. And the art in both series is also really strong. So I wish that he would do a master class in how to create something using characters that we already know and love. Because sometimes people just resort to tricks, and I think he's just really masterful in how he's doing it. And at first, I thought, when he was promoting it, and everyone's saying it's going to be the best thing you've seen in X-Men in so long, and they're hyping it up, and I just thought, can it really be that good? And it really is that good. So I can't wait to see what happens next, and that's a great feeling to have. When I go to the comic book store, it is literally the first thing I read. I grab the books, grab my lunch, read the book, and then eat my lunch, and I'm so satisfied. And again, there's so much mystery. We just don't know what's going on right now in some ways, and I'm loving it.
I'm interested to hear what Doug has to say, because you've now read.
I read the issues that I borrowed from Derek, which was the first two of both Hotspots. And so,
Aspects, Powers of 10.
It's a mouthful.
It is. It's a bunch.
A little bit. And I have decided that I am going to read the whole thing in trade. I'm going to wait, because one of the things I love about this, and I love about the show, is that I get to hear you guys talk about it, and then I get to read it, and then it doesn't suck. It's great. And it actually, okay, this is going to be sappy, okay? But it takes me back to when I was a kid, and we would ride to school on a bus, and there'd be this one guy who would have this book bag full of comics.
Yeah.
I'm not playing around. We're talking like a book bag twice this size, okay? And this mofo would bring comics like this, okay? And where we lived in Germany at the time, it was like 45 minutes before you got to school. So that was plenty of time to read anything that this dude had. And he bought everything, and he just wanted to talk shop before going into the worst place on earth, which was middle school. So that's all we did for 45 minutes, was sit there, read comics, and talk about this, that, and the other, and our theories, and this, that, and the other. So House of X, Powers of 10, I was about to say Powers of X, takes me back to that, and I enjoyed it. So I'm loving everything everyone's saying, and it doesn't, anything they say doesn't spoil it for me, because
it's still a joy to read, even if you know what happens.
Exactly.
And the other thing I'm loving about it is that, you guys have heard me bitch about so much of what DC has done in the new 52 and the whatever, Rebirth and everything else, blah, 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 blah. And to me, this is doing so much a better job of writing a big story. And DC's over there with metal and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just, and you've got Doomsday going on, and I'm like, y'all stuff is not lining up. We finally got the 11th issue of Doomsday, for example. And talk about being disappointed. I finished that, and I was like, I've waited 4 months for this. I was so angry.
It would have been better.
So can I just make a comment on that? Because that's one of the things I was going to say is I'm glad that they're doing this weekly, and you're not going to have to wait long for a trade, because the trade's going to be out in like 4 or 5 weeks easily, right? But they have released almost this entire series in between 2 releases of Doomsday Clock, and it's showing how much it annoys people to wait between comics. It's ridiculous.
Because Doomsday Clock, for example, had Saturn Girl in it early on and Johnny Thunder. So you had someone from the Justice Society, which had been missing from this new DC books, and someone from the Legion of Superheroes who've also been missing. And here we are in issue 11, and they seem to have been, instead of getting you closer to knowing how these characters are going to be brought back, that didn't happen. But yet over in Superman, you've got the new Legion of Superheroes appearing.
Yep.
You've got their first issue of their miniseries.
Is it already out?
Yeah, Millennium #1 is out. You just what's it called? Legion of Superheroes Millennium #1 is out. And then over in Justice League, you've got the Justice League going back, 2 of them going back in time and meeting just the Justice Society. But you're like, is this an alternate version of it? They just have they said they were going to wipe the slate clean to make things
More
easier and easier to access, but instead they've just made a big old stinking pile.
It just smeared the shit around.
Yeah, and it's just sad.
So,
Well, sorry.
No, go. No,
I
I'm
read
going.
this-
I always go last because I like to hear what Johnson said first.
Okay, so I read this last issue. Was it Powers the last one, or was
Powers.
it Powers? Okay.
It was Powers.
So I think I had stopped reading X-Men when Mr. Sinister became a thing.
Ooh.
Right? So, like, I missed that whole thing.
Right.
Like in the original run or whatever.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what was going on, right? So I started reading and I was like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
Because it was so vague.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, who is this dude? And why did they make him so gay? Because that's not a problem. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying,
Being that he's gay.
being that, well, see, yeah, exactly, being that I am, Stonewall Inn. But I mean, the point being, I was laughing the whole way through
Yeah.
it now, mind you, because what was funny about it was I was laughing at the same time as he was like killing people. Like,
Yeah.
kill this fool. And he did. And,
Yeah.
I mean, just weird stuff like that. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
what in the heck is going on?
It was quirky and
Very
unexpected.
quirky.
Again, unexpected.
Very
Right.
unexpected.
Because Derek texted me after reading, he goes, "Has he always been gay?" And I'm like, "I don't know." But this shit's hilarious.
Yeah.
It was so well written and just ridiculous and hilarious, but it also drove the main plot. And that was the other cool thing. So.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
All right, Travis, you got anything?
Yeah, I just want to know something. I mean, what is it that's going on with Xavier? I mean, does anybody else feel like there's something really off about him in this?
So we don't know what's going on with him, especially now that he knows how bad life got and that his ultimate dream of how to coexist with humanity didn't work. So the Xavier we're seeing now is not the Xavier we've always known. And that's the other thing that's so cool about this. The characters we're seeing are not the characters we've grown up
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
with. None of them.
I had a theory, but I have nothing to support this theory right now.
No, give it.
But my theory is that's not Professor X.
So that's what I was gonna say. So you only see him without the mask thing in like the first couple issues, like, and then as soon as all this stuff happens, now it's there the whole time. You don't see his face, and you kind of get that feeling like maybe that's not who they think it is under there, and then maybe that's gonna be some big reveal.
I still think
There's so many reveals left, I think.
Right.
I got a question.
yeah.
I was thinking, how much does the Shadow King play into? Because the Shadow King's the whole reason why he's crippled, right?
No.
Well,
I don't remember.
yes and no.
Well, the Shadow King,
It's been kind of back and forth over the years. So
and plus the way
when I say crippled, originally. No,
yeah,
what were you gonna
originally.
say?
well, the thing that's happening now, the story we're
Funny that-
seeing now, because I think we have 2 more issues or 3 more issues after.
Yeah, you guys are definitely.
We're ahead of you.
Yeah.
So what we discover is that Mora has lived multiple lives.
Yeah.
So and we see
Well, you
several
read
of
that,
those.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got
Yeah.
so we don't know if he was crippled in this at that or when and how anything happens. Like for example, we don't know if Jean ever became the Phoenix in this.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know in the current line they're telling right now. We don't know what's what.
Oh wow.
Well, in Powers of 4 of 6 of Powers of 10, it does show Professor X without the stuff on, in the Sinister scenes.
Right.
Right.
He's in the wheelchair.
Right. He's in the floating chair.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus when he's got the thing on and he's walking.
Yeah.
So again, there's just still a whole bunch of mystery, and we also still don't know what Life Number 6 was about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's still out there.
Okay. Well,
So-
the whole reason why I say that, and I promise I'm done.
No, that's fine.
Um, The whole reason why I say that is because Hickman does a really good job of doing shout outs to things that were a big deal,
Yes.
but were under the radar,
Mhm.
and that's the reason why I asked about Shadow King.
Yeah.
Because originally, that was one of the reasons why he couldn't use his legs.
Right.
And when Travis mentioned the thing about the big reveal, I was like, man,
Yeah,
because
no,
Shadow
we-
King kind of did that. You know?
Plus,
Mhm.
the Shadow King was when Xavier died the last time. When Cyclops killed him.
Right.
Well, it turns out he was actually on the astral plane battling the Shadow King
Yeah.
repeatedly.
Wow.
And then
Yeah, that's.
somehow Psylocke and some other folks went and got him, and he took over Phantom X's body and came back to Earth. Saved
Right, so that's
hiding for a
Phantom
while.
X's body, maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
So and we don't again, but then there's been several things that happened after that. So it's just like
No, it was Moira.
what's going on, right?
It was the
So the
one-
Shadow King
it was
definitely
in,
has played
it
some
was in-
recent parts, but who knows what he's doing now?
No,
Yeah.
the one issue before.
Yeah,
Okay.
they also haven't really explained much of the whole mutants coming out of whatever at the roots of the the pod piece. They haven't really explained that very much either, and I get the feeling like, whenever they were, I mean, I don't want to spoil too much, but they were leaving on that mission, whatever, as a team, and it was, kind of sad. They're like, we might not come back, and then you're like, well, maybe, but what if they're just growing more of you, and it doesn't matter if you die? Like, what? They haven't really explained too much. It was there. I know it's going to come back at some point, but I'm just, it's interesting.
Apocalypse or Sinister that does clones.
Sinister.
Sinister.
So maybe.
Which that's how they got the mutants in the future, the Chimera.
Mhm.
It was through Sinister's,
Mhm.
dealings.
So he's probably somehow.
But of
connected
course,
and all
now
that.
that everything has happened, where, that team got killed ultimately as they were going after Mother Mole.
Mhm.
Well, we know that Moira's going to have to reboot at some point, and we're going to come back and start again with new knowledge.
Mhm.
So that's just going to have to happen again soon, and these people are going to be alive again. So for
Hey.
now, death isn't permanent.
Mhm.
So
And why
one
did
other thing I
Jean-
was going to ask.
Telekinesis. Did y'all notice that?
Mhm.
She was depending.
Was that-
so, Jean in that issue where all the mutants attacked the
yeah,
space
yeah.
station.
Yeah,
She didn't use her telekinesis. She was completely doing telepathy, and then she got easily dispatched.
Mhm.
It was just very strange. So
Yeah.
So there's another thing that I don't know if this has happened before. I noticed it in this last issue of Powers of 10. The have they been skipping over the power of 2 every time? X squared?
I think it just depends. Some issues, cover certain things. So I think it just depends on where the story is for that issue.
Because I feel like they've skipped one of the powers in another issue that I read. Because I think I was reading it and I was like, what happened to X squared? Because in the first one they go through all of them, and then I think they skip a couple in some of the other ones. Maybe that I don't know if it had anything to do with what's going on in that timeline, but it confused me that I was like, well, what about the 100 years out?
Right.
Mhm.
So,
Well, again, can't wait till tomorrow because
I know
we'll get a
tomorrow.
new
He's
issue.
talking. You're muted.
no,
Who
it's
is it?
delayed.
Oh, it was delayed?
Me.
Okay.
Yeah, this is delayed, what we're watching.
Sorry.
I'm probably gonna jump
yeah.
off after the comic section.
So yeah, of course I'm obviously loving it. I love it. So the thing is Hickman does, he just weaves this web and he just kind of shows you different pieces, of the puzzle at different times. It's like you never really know which timeline you're in now, and it just so many different, like, especially this most recent issue, as I read through it, and I want to say that somehow, like, the sinister secrets that are revealed,
Yeah.
I have a feeling like that's going to become important, because Hickman doesn't really do things just for fun.
No.
It's
Right.
not like he wrote
Everything
all of
has
that
a purpose.
just because it was like, oh, this might kind of be cool, it'll be Easter egg. No, he doesn't do a like 2-page spread of secrets just to be like, oh, that's just fun. But yeah, there are all sorts of things, like we are missing the 6th timeline still. I want to know what's happening with that.
Makes me wonder if that connects with Professor whoever.
Yeah.
Because,
I mean, it's possible. I want to say, going back, so when I went to buy House 4, the guy at the comic shop, he was like, when you go home, read 3 first and then read 4. And that way, because it's just one continuous story, essentially. And I did, and it was so good. Like, it just was so satisfying.
I'm going to need to go back and do that.
And yeah, you totally need to go back and do it. It's so good to just go and read it just straight through. And that's the thing, is like, that the deaths that happened are going to be undone, but at the same time, they carried such weight in the moment.
Like the
Yeah,
more,
they were
like
so
the
well
downloading
written.
of that data.
The downloading of the data, and then on the mother mold, the different conversations that were happening and the different things that were going on, like it carried weight. It's not permanent, and at the same time, I literally teared up at some of that stuff.
And also, the characterization of the X-Men, for example, Nightcrawler and Wolverine, the interaction they had at that point,
Mm-hmm.
reminded me of Nightcrawler from the time period where Ileana was lost in limbo.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
it's kind of like, as he's writing these different people, he's writing them so well that it seems like they're from the past.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
His characterizations are so spot on.
Mm-hmm.
His voices are so spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, anybody else saying what Kurt said to Wolverine would sound ridiculous.
Right.
But coming at that moment and knowing Nightcrawler and his religious background
Yep.
and all of that, it was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
It was such, it was. It's just such in character, and he writes these voices so well. So we get a red issue next week. So, in the reading order, if you look in the back, you've got the different ones. So it's going to be a doozy. Like, I feel like tomorrow is going to be, because it's a red issue, then there's one issue, and then there's the final issue. So, we're like on the home stretch here. And I'm just so excited. But yeah, seeing Sinister come back and be not quite the character that I was, it was like a different characterization, but it kind of made sense, It was kind
just
of
like
mad
with Laura,
scientist.
they threw a twist in there.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
So, but like that's the thing we're talking about. When they go to see, when they go to see Sinister, Professor X is in the wheelchair. In the future, in what we have seen, in another timeline, he's walking around fine with Cerebro on his head. In some other issues, he's walking around on his own. And it's just like you never really know where you're at. And so, but I know that it's all going to come together in the end.
Very good.
Yes, yes.
I have 2 words.
I will say I'm not going to be able to read tomorrow's right away since clearly I'm not near the comic book store, but I'm sad. I need to. I know. I'm thinking about it.
All right, 2 words.
So I've been thinking more about it,
Mm-hmm.
about my earlier comment and theory, and I have 2 words for you guys to ponder. Cassandra Nova.
You think she might be walking around in the thing?
I don't know, but he is
Yeah.
he is standing very feminine.
It's
I mean,
happened
he's
before.
very. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
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 Could be.
Yeah, Cassandra Nova has not showed up yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Has
think
anything
so.
else from the new X-Men popped up yet?
Um,
Kind of like what?
yeah, I'm trying to remember if there has been anything yet.
Because he's doing shout-outs from everything.
I don't think, I'm
That's
not
true.
I'm not certain just yet. I'd have to go back and think
And
about
Cassandra
it.
Nova has shown up in the X-Men Red series
Mhm.
before
Yeah,
it
she
was
did.
canceled too soon.
So-
That was like one of those things. Here, let's do a few issues.
Speaking of characterizations, I mean not Cassandra Nova, but another female character, Emma Frost.
Fun.
Finally, Emma Frost is back.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
back to where she should,
Being a diva.
because Bendis is not writing her. But anyway, but yeah, her walking up into that courtroom with 2 of the
Gives me
Cuckoo
life.
sisters.
Hilarious.
Oh my God! It was like, yes,
It's
there
true,
is
it's
Emma
true.
Frost.
Yeah.
That is Emma. That's the Emma Frost I love.
That is
I
true.
love.
Mm-hmm. Which then makes me excited for the Marauders when
yes,
that starts.
I know. Yeah. So okay. Speaking of which, so does anybody have anything else? I think I've kind of said my piece.
Nope.
So I mean, So far, I'm loving it. Okay. So speaking of Marauders, so let's. They posted a new trailer for Dawn of X, which Dawn of X, if you don't know, is the run of comics that is coming after House of X and Powers of 10. So it's I think 7 different series right now. Is it 6 or 7? They're all on my pull list. I could probably go and look them up. But yeah, so let's take a look at this Dawn of X trailer.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Right?
it's gonna be good. It's gonna be interesting. Yeah, who is that? I can't remember. Is it
Tom Cassidy.
Tom Cassidy? Thank you. I could remember Cassidy. Yeah,
You're
Tom
welcome.
Cassidy. Do what?
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, some exciting things. It's gonna be some good stuff coming. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. I think that's all for comics. Anybody else have any comics stuff or news they want to share?
I'm just gonna say I'm probably gonna jump off because I don't have anything for TV and I didn't see anything y'all just watched on that trailer. So there's no point in me looking at the movie trailers you guys got. So I'm gonna jump off. You guys enjoy the rest of the show. This was fun. I'm glad I was still able to do this from DC, but it happens. All right, guys. I always do. Bye bye.